Okay, we are live. Good morning, noon, and night. How you guys doing? My name is Ryan. I am the producer of the Building Great Sales Teams podcast. It is our 100th episode. We are at episode 100, and it's been a really long ride. But before we get into that, let's hit off this intro and get started. Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, my name is Ryan, and none of this would be possible if we did not have the man of the hour, Mr. Douglas Mitchell. Now, Doug has been doing this podcast thing for a little under a year. He brought me on after firing me twice, but he was like, "Hey, Ryan, I think you're great. So let's bring you back on. Let's do this podcast thing." So let's welcome Doug to the show. Mr. Douglas Mitchell, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. Appreciate that intro and you putting that out there as well, making me look bad. But yeah, this is the 100th episode, man. I mean, I'm tripping out because, you know, when I first reached out to you, like a week later, I was like, you know what, this isn't a good idea. You know, we don't need to add to the payroll or whatever the case was, whatever reason I had at the time. And so I canceled my interview with you, and you still came in and you knew it was canceled, but you didn't tell me. You're like, "Oh, I didn't know it was canceled," you know? And so you still came in and you were just like, go ahead.
So I did not know it was canceled until I checked my email when I was leaving the office. I was like, "Oh, it really was canceled." Okay, that's great. But I showed up, because I made a commitment and I followed through. I'm integrous. That's what happened.
I love it. So if you guys don't know already, Ryan is a producer, Building Great Sales Teams. He's my content manager. He's the road warrior next to me. Anytime we travel and we're driving somewhere, we're flying somewhere. And so he's been a huge part of these 100 episodes, as well as Veronica Villanueva. She's our social media director. She's amazing at what she does. She does the social media for Argenta, for Building Great Sales Teams, and for Argenta Solar on top of that. And then her assistant, Ann Amadora, she's our social media assistant. She's been a huge part of this. So all the content you guys see coming out, I don't do any of that. This is all I do. And they make all this magic happen on the back end. They put the podcast episodes out and they cut them up and make them all the content, make you guys look good that have been guests on my podcast before. So huge thanks to them. And this is an amazing episode for us. We've got, first off, Drewbie Wilson with Break Free Academy. He's the vice president over there. He's a multi-million-dollar sales producer. He's done 10 million in sales recently. He's the meme lord. He's got his Closer Memes course. He's the founder of Lead Stages Software. He's a best-selling author of Crush the Day, and he also has the Crush the Day podcast. He's killing it on there. Drewbie, welcome to the show, brother.
Well, dang, man. When you read it off like that sounds pretty freaking cool. No, thank you so much for having me on, you guys. I am just grateful and honored to be here. You know, I've done some things, as you just heard, but more importantly, I'm excited to share and help some other people who are listening here do some amazing things in their life, because that's really what it's all about. So thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you, brother. We also got Wayne Skinner. He's my right-hand man. He's the vice president for Argenta Field Solutions. He's responsible for 35 million in commissions over the last 10 years, trained hundreds of sales reps, door-to-door, B2B, telemarketing, and he's my partner over at Argenta Field Solutions. Wayne, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate the intro, man. 35 million, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah, absolutely.
You tallied it up. That's awesome.
Yes, sir. And last but not least, we got Scott Simons. He's the president and partner in Carter Myers Automotive, which includes 5 dealerships. He's the TRX GOAT, co-host of Breakfast of Champions, the #1 rated morning show on Clubhouse. He's an avid angel investors. He's an avid angel investor. And then he's also, which is a huge accomplishment, been married for 20 years and has 2 amazing kiddos that I get to hear about all the time. Scott, welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, Doug, thanks for having me. And Wayne, Drewbie, Ryan, let's have some fun today. But I'm honored to be here with these superhumans, and let's provide some value, which is what we're here for. So thanks for having me.
I love it, Scott. All right, guys, appreciate y'all joining. And speaking of fun, how fun is this mustache? Pretty cool, huh? So it's not my greatest look, but it is for an amazing cause. Okay. So if you guys get a chance and you haven't made your donations, you haven't done your tax donations yet, here's your chance to do it. Jump into the comments here, and there will be a link there to my Movember page, and you can donate to Men's Health. Now, this is an important charity for me for a few reasons. I've had several of my friends and family pass away from mental health issues, as well as I know early detection is a big deal for men. With women, it's breast cancer. With men, it's testicular cancer. So Movember is a great organization that provides funding to programs that provide awareness and prevention and medical research into all of those things I just mentioned. So please, if you have a few dollars that you're putting away for donations and to get some tax benefits out of, take advantage of Movember. And so I'll be donning this mustache for the rest of the month here. And so another thing we're doing to raise money for Movember that Drewbie joined me on is we're going to run a marathon here pretty soon. And the person that raises the most money for Movember is going to have to admit the opposing person's view on what a taco is. Okay, Drewbie, I'm going to give you the floor. I know you're loaded up and ready to go. What is a taco, Drewbie?
Hold on. Now,
go ahead.
Context is very important here, Douglas. Let's not just play this in your favor just so you can. No. This ain't your show, but it is your show. But you can't just play it like this. The question is really a matter of, specifically, is it a breakfast taco or a breakfast burrito? The reason is, when we attended the original Apex Evolution event, shout out class 001, right? We had breakfast burritos in the morning. Why do I call them a breakfast burrito? Well, it's pretty obvious. You took the eggs, the sausage, the cheese, you put it in the middle of your little flour tortilla there, and you rolled it up on itself, which as soon as it becomes a rolled unit, right? It's touching all the way around. It's circular in shape even. It becomes a breakfast burrito. But young Douglas here and his fantastic mustache, and as much as I love him and appreciate him, is 100% wrong in calling it a breakfast taco. I don't care if you're from South Texas or South Dakota. As soon as that bad boy rolls over on itself, it becomes a burrito, Doug. I hate to tell you that you're wrong because I love it when you're right. But this is one of those situations, bub.
Are you done?
I'm going to give you the floor. I don't want to take the whole show.
Are you done? Okay. So I would love for all except for Scott, if anybody on this show right now calls a Mexican restaurant and asks them for a breakfast taco or a breakfast burrito, let me tell you what you're going to get. When you ask for a breakfast taco, you're going to get a small tortilla. When you ask for a burrito, you are going to get a large tortilla. They have both for breakfast, but one is large and one is small. Okay. And this is not just, okay. Now, when you go up north, they fuck it up.
2022, you can't size shame my burrito.
Hey,
don't you dare.
My floor. When you go up north, yes, they're going to call it a breakfast burrito because they're uneducated on the ways of Mexico. Texas borders Mexico, Southern California borders Mexico, and in those states, it is a breakfast taco. I want to hear from
America.
What you
America, baby.
Let's get the comments rolling. Let's get the conversation rolling, and at the end of the episode, we'll come back to this and count them up. Is it a taco? Is it a burrito? And the description is a small flour tortilla with eggs, cheese, and bacon or sausage, whatever, right? We can agree on that. That's what we're talking about here. Drewbie's
Sure,
argument.
we can agree on this, right?
folded versus rolled. My argument is the size of the tortilla. Let them rip. All right.
Well, and a flour tortilla is going to naturally fold. Like, it doesn't just stand up on its own. So it's going to fold over. So then by default,
So
it
I
would be a
guess the
burrito.
shaming should really be about the size of the contents inside of your shell then. Because if you're not
Ooh,
putting
okay.
enough goods in there to really set it to be a taco, because a taco should be filled to the brim with goods, not touching, not folded over on itself, right?
Okay,
I
see
mean,
that
this is
makes
pretty-
sense. I'm here.
I'm
I'm
not-
here for
Oh,
that.
look, we got a
Okay,
conversion.
okay,
We
so
got
here's
a
the thing.
conversion.
I'm not
He's
going
right.
to convert. I'm not converting. But
No.
Drewbie, let's talk about a quesadilla then. What is a quesadilla? Right?
A
'Cause you take
sandwich,
a tortilla, you put cheese, and
Quesadilla
you fold
is
it.
folded over on itself and heated on a flat top. So it's
Okay.
different because it's a
Okay.
different style of cooking, right? You're heating the shell and you're making sure, typically a good quesadilla, you're either pressing it between two hot plates or you're doing it on a flat top
Okay.
griddle style. Either is fine.
Scott's completely non-biased in this argument, right? He's heard both sides. Scott, what say you?
You know, I really don't like getting involved in politics or debates like this because I love everybody. I love burritos and tacos. So whatever you call them, I like to eat both. I just say, you know, whatever you're comfortable with. Just if you want to call it a taco burrito, just make sure you include me. That's all I ask.
That's why he's got the number one freaking show on Clubhouse, because he knows how to play the game. Well done, sir.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you being on
God,
my
you
team.
can run for president now, man. That was a hell of an answer.
I know if
That's
I could
it,
just,
man.
if Trump would have listened to me, he'd have still been president if they didn't take the election, right? But anyway, if he would have listened to me.
Oh,
You
shit.
know,
Okay.
Man.
Here we go. Here we go. We're
Let me
going down
reel
the
this
rabbit
in.
hole now.
All right, guys, going into business, kind of pivoting here. You know, I've got a few questions for you, and I definitely want to let the listeners and the viewers know, if you drop your question in the comments, whether it's for one of us individually or the group as a whole, we're going to do our best to answer those questions for you as we continue with this episode. But in the meantime, I've got a talking point that I want to relay out to you guys. So in a lot of major businesses, especially small business, typically, you know, you start doing over 2-3 million. Typically what happens is you have to appoint a number two. The workload is just too much. And then you need to divvy up your creative zone of genius. You need to keep yours, and then you need to divvy up everything else, right? And so what typically happens is you put a number two in place. You know, sometimes it's the visionary integrator setup, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's just like, hey, we got a lot of work and I need somebody that I can count on to handle these accounts. I'm going to handle these bigger accounts, whatever the case is. So a lot of businesses have a number two in them. And there's two amazing number twos on this call right now. Drewbie Wilson with Break Free Academy and Wayne Skinner with Argenta Field Solutions. And so I thought this was appropriate that we bring this up. What about the number twos that could easily be number ones? So I'll kick it off with Drewbie. What does it take to find a number two like you?
I don't know. Every time you call me a number two, I really can't help but laugh inside because I'm a giant child. But no, so for me, man, as far as my position, I'm the vice president here at Break Free Academy. When I came into this company, I was a client initially. So when I think about if I'm a business owner and I'm actively seeking, right, because I'm in that leadership role now where I'm kind of overseeing bringing on new talent, what I'm looking for in a strong number two is someone who's an advocate, right? Because if someone's already familiar with my brand and they know my product, maybe they're currently a client, they're someone who's benefiting from our services, they also tend to be someone who's interested in carrying our mission, right? Because our mission and core values is a really, really big part of what we do here at Apex and Break Free Academy. So when we find advocates that are like all about it, it would make sense that if they're looking for more opportunity, that we can offer and help them with that opportunity. Because ultimately what I recognized at this point in the journey is that there are some people who want to be business owners and entrepreneurs and want that responsibility. But then there are also people who want to be successful and create that and have that feeling of the team and that growth, but they don't want to carry all of the weight. And so, maybe that's just because they're still getting warmed up to that idea and they could go on to become a strong number one or a leader somewhere else. But to get there for me, working through the system, I'm constantly working myself out of a job. So every time I want to delegate and move to the next thing, I have to find a strong number two to replace myself. And typically for me, the first place I look is, hey, who's a good advocate and who's somebody who's kind of already doing this position as it is that I can then present that opportunity to and see if that's something they'd be interested in.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, so many times in the general just business as usual, we come across these people and it happens to me all the time. I'll be at a restaurant, I'll be, at the detail shop or whatever the case, and you'll see that guy, and this is for hiring people in general, but something will happen where like this is a dude. You know what I'm saying? This is somebody that has it doesn't matter if they're waiting tables or not. They love what they're doing and they're passionate about it, right? And so recognizing it just in your day-to-day life, but like you said, Drewbie, it could be a client. If you're doing construction and this person's got, a $500,000 home or something like that, and they got their stuff together, it may be a client, which was in your case, that's what it was. So let me move this over to Scott. So Scott, well, I guess the first question is, do you have that kind of like designated number two in your business? I know there's a lot going on in a car dealership. And if you do, how do you kind of divvy up the work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So thank you for asking. So Doug, I do have a number two. So here we have 5 car dealerships, all feeding into me as the leader. I have a number two, a gentleman's we've worked together now for about 15 years, and he is in charge when I'm not here. He's involved in every meeting. He started off in sales. We like to promote from within, and he's worked his way up to second in command. Underneath that org chart, we have general managers at each stores or leaders of each stores that in essence report up to Chad and then report up to me. But they run their own businesses. And if you really sit and think about it, the old school way of managing people was don't teach anybody anything. And it's kind of like job security. But you really don't have to worry about that as a number one because you're number one, right? But what I preach to our team is, one, we get to know every employee. We ask for their 3 personal and 3 professional goals. Why that's important is that, one, it lets them know we care about them. So every employee, what's your 3 personal, 3 professional goals? You report that to your direct leader, and then you report it to Chad and I, and then we take a look at it. And we see people that say, hey, I want to be more. Some people don't want to move up the corporate ladder. Some people don't want to, they want to be the best sales rep. They want to manage themselves, not other people. So sometimes companies will promote up the top producer. They don't want that. So then it creates a situation where they may leave because you promoted them into a position they don't want. So once we get to know them on a personal level, professional level, we set goals. So now we're setting goals for next year. The leaders meet with them every quarter. Now, if someone says, hey, I want more. I want to go into finance next. So in a car dealership, it's sales, finance or business office, sales manager, general sales manager, general manager, then managing partner, which would be me, and then, of course, dealer. So, one, they have a very clear career path. 2, we find out what they want to accomplish. 3, we love to promote from within. That's a secret here of ours. Most of my managers, I think I have 22 managers. 19 of them have sold cars here. My right-hand guy, he has sold cars here. We've worked together for a very long time. If you don't have a number 2, the lid for your career is right here. You can't grow any further. So each department manager, then it trickles down to sales, to service, to parts, to accounting, to recon. It's our battle cry. Who is your number 2? Who is your person? Because you can't grow to another position if I can't replace you. And how does your business work when you're not there? It may go down slightly, but it shouldn't completely collapse. That means you haven't built a good team. But you've got to have confidence in the fact that this person is not going to take my job, which a lot of ignorant thinking is I'm going to keep people in the dark and I'm not going to help push them up because I don't want them to take my job. So our battle cry here has been forever: promote from within, personal, professional goals, and then train basically your replacement so we can consider you. If you don't have a replacement, that means you haven't built a team and you haven't poured into a number 2. Also, when they do get that position and they do get that opportunity, it doesn't hurt the company as bad overall. So it works in a bunch of different facets, but it's a really good topic to talk about. It's extremely important for any company out there to adopt this concept and work hard on it.
No, I love it, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I would not. I mean, this show wouldn't exist for one. You know what I mean? If I didn't have Wayne in the position that he's in, and you know, I know I'm not perfect in the sense of our relationship with myself and Wayne. You know, I've done some stupid stuff. You know, it happens. It just happened a couple weeks ago. Like, we were talking over each other. We were frustrated. We were upset. But that's the thing. Like, we have that relationship. We've been together for 10 plus years now. And we're able to do that. And then by the end of the conversation, it's like, man, enjoy your family. Have a good night. You know what I mean? Like, business as usual. And it's like, man, it's just crazy that we are able to do that, because we don't take it personally. Just because we're passionate about a certain subject or argument or whatever the case is, we don't take it personally. And so, Wayne, my question to you about this subject would be, like, how do you keep a number two? You know what I mean? How do you keep that key player in the business long term, and you know, fire away the good and the bad, brother?
Yeah, I mean, everything that that Scott and Drew said are, man, it's just spot on to how I feel. I mean, you can't when I manage and build, even from the most entry level person, I'm constantly pushing you can't be promoted if you can't be replaced, right? You have to be replaced, and I want you to replace yourself by two, right? Give me options on who we're doing this. I want to make sure you can do it a couple of times, because just doing it once, you know, the old saying that even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So I want to see you duplicate yourself by two, and make that happen. So with keeping number twos and strong number twos and developing them, really it comes down to, for me, is I just build a relationship with those folks, man. I sit down with them, I pour into them. I make sure that they clearly see the path that they have to go down to take over my job, because I want to do what's next, right? So if I want to do what's next, I need to make sure I have somebody to come in and take my spot. And so I have to have that clear path, like Scott said, like Drew said, and I also have to recognize when this is kind of a key piece too, is that not every number two is going to become a number one, right? There is that person that, like Drew said, that, man, that's not really what they want. I mean, what they want to do is, you know, make a bunch of money and spend more time with family. Whereas a number two, or even moving into a number one, you know, the time with family piece is you know, gets kind of gets taken away, right? You don't get to spend as much time because you're working more. But really paying attention to it, pouring into them on a personal level as well as a business level. Make sure that you're mentoring, that you know what's going on with them. You recognize when there's problems way before they actually happen, and really do your best to guide them along the way, right?
100%. Any other thoughts on that, guys? It's a tough one. I couldn't agree more, because it's like everybody's born wanting to be a number one. You know what I mean? But it's like, man, if I'm born wanting to play in the NFL, you know what I'm saying? Like, the percentages go down drastically, you know? And Wayne's right in the sense that, like, you know, the time with family just depends on how you operate your business. But one thing that'll never change is that it all falls on you. You know, when you're in that number one position and payrolls due, you got to figure it out. And it doesn't matter if you have to clear out your savings account, you have to clear out your personal bank account, sell whatever you got to sell. I mean, I've done it all, and you got to make payroll. And sometimes people want to be free of that, you know, and they just want to go out and make an impact in the world. And I think number twos have an ability to make more impact than number ones, because number ones have to put the business first, but number twos can put the impact that they make on other people first. You know, whenever me and Wayne get into it, it's usually he's protecting his sales organization and I'm protecting the business. And then we're meeting in the middle, figuring out how that's going to work, how we can work that together. And it's difficult sometimes, y'all. It becomes incredibly, incredibly difficult at that point. So let's talk a little bit about our salespeople. right? And so I've gone through a lot of this past year. My team's gone from probably 30 to 40 down to like 6 or 7 now. And it's because we've put our core values first this year, and we've had a lot of stressful things happen in the business, going from an AT&T based model to a solar based model. And so there's two things salespeople hate is change and change, And so we've gone through a lot in terms of dealing with lack of production, performance, having to cut salespeople loose. So this is a subject I feel like, especially on podcasts and interviews and stuff, most people avoid because they never want to say, hey, I terminate salespeople. That's not the best look in general, right? So I'll kick it off with Scott. How many salespeople do you manage right now?
We have in between sales reps and managers, there's over probably 60 total
Okay.
between the stores. I think it's a really good question. We're pretty clear on our expectations, and we are from a company standpoint. So if you say, Scott, how long have you been in the auto industry? It's been like 27 years. How many people have I actually terminated? And typically, if they are terminated, it's because of HR issue. It's because there was no other choice. They had to be let go. Yeah. Most of the time, people leave our company. Our turnover is extremely low based on the industry average. A auto sales rep, 70% of the time turns over in the first year. 70%. Ours is substantially less than that. It's about half. But what we do is we make sure that we're slow to hire and we have very clear expectations. And then we train on those expectations where typically someone says, Scott, or to their leader, I can't live up to the expectations. I simply can't do it. So we track a couple things that's pretty unique to our company. I think we track how many hours it takes them to sell a car. So you take how many hours they work divided by how many cars they sell. Used to be the old adage was if you sold 8 to 10 cars a month, you could quote unquote keep your job. What we do is we look at where they're at in their journey and then are they progressing? Most people that run a car dealership, you want them to work about 22 days a month and you want them to sell a car a day, a car every 12 hours. And if you sit and think about that, that's where we would prefer them to be. We're closer to the 15 average, 16 average per associate. We don't load up the floor. We don't hire a bunch of people and pray they make it, which is strategies from some businesses. They'll hire 10 and make them fight for 2 positions. We don't do business that way because turnover is not good for the company. It's not good for the community. We're kind of in a small town, and I wouldn't want to be treated that way. So a lot of my management style and our culture here has to do with things that we've experienced and how we want to be treated. If you treat your employees how you want to be treated, your team, you treat your customers how you want to be treated, and you're a good steward towards your community, typically everything works out. So we track their numbers. We train and coach all the time. We teach them how to build their own brand, how to sell cars. We track how many cars they sell versus how many cars we generate. That's another thing we do. So when I first started tracking this number, our sales reps would sell 5% of the cars we sold. By training them on building their brand, building their machine, which we learned through Apex, now they sell 45% of the cars that are sold by them. They're going to close at a higher percentage. You're going to make higher gross, and it's more efficient. My goal is to push that number up to 80 or 90%. Then I don't have to advertise. Then I can reinvest that money in technology, in infrastructure, in anything to make us efficient. So those are some of the things that we track. And we have a smaller team that's more efficient. We want to make sure everybody has the ability to make, good living. The average wage here in Stanton's about $55,000 for a family. Our average sales associate here makes over $100,000 a year. And we do have a waiting list in some positions for people to come work for us. We also mentor our team, which I know you've heard me talk about. I talked about it at Apex when I had opportunity to speak at Apex Live. How we mentor. And I just started my latest mentorship, which is about 20 people that we sit and do life with. We talk about finances. We talk about relationships, health, wealth, finances, their personal, professional goals. That also helps cut down on your attrition, on your turnover. And that's something I decided to do. I will not coach or train. I will not work with people outside of the people that work for me. And I have had people come relocate to work here to go through my mentorship that have moved from other states. So that's the value that it brings. You'll see if you go look at my social media, I was probably tagged on 3 or 4 posts yesterday from associates. They got up and had to tell their story. We filmed it for them. And, we're practicing them getting up and speaking in front of people. Next week, we're going to, well, I don't want to say, but next week we'll go into some credit things and we'll do some other fun things. So that's just some of the strategies we use here, and some of the matrices that we follow in the auto industry, which is pretty unique to us.
So there's a few points that you said in there that I want to make sure everybody hears. And the first thing is you're terminating based on metrics. You know what I'm saying? You're looking at their metrics, and that's where you get your first indication, like, hey, we got an issue here. But it's not just flat metrics. It's a sliding scale depending on how long they've been with the company and what they've been through at the company, right? And then the second piece that I really want to point out is that mentorship program, right? So everything that Scott's doing is anti-termination, right? You know what I mean? Slow to hire is a huge piece that I wanted to point out also, because I've done both. And, whenever I'm slower to hire, my retention rate increases. It goes through the roof, But one thing I will say is that I've noticed is because I'm slow to hire, the retention rate increases. And maybe we have better comp. The performance decreases a little bit is what I'm noticing, And so those sliding scales are tough sometimes to manage when that type of stuff is happening. But in terms of when you actually do have to terminate a salesperson, what does it typically have to do with?
For us, it typically has to do with something that they broke company policy. They broke their culture. Like we do not stand for people that are lazy, that don't show up on time. I mean, there's certain, we're really big on making sure we have the proper staff to stay covered. So when I get someone to turn into PTO time off, I have to look at all 5 dealerships and see who's going to affect, and then I have to slide pieces from dealership to dealership to make sure that we're covered. So, typically, like I said, people typically resign because we're so clear in our expectations. Mm-hmm. If you fire somebody and they're in shock, then you've done a shitty job as a leader. You've done a real shitty job. Once as leaders, we've decided to hire that person. It's then on our responsibility to bring the best out of them. Because was it a hiring mistake or was it a training mistake? Because we all agreed based on everything we did, personality test, criminal history test, credit, all these things that we did to hire that person, all the money we spent, we all agreed we should hire. So when they don't work out, especially in a short amount of time, I look at the leader and say, where did we go wrong? Because we all agreed we should hire them, which I typically talk to everybody before they're hired, and just to make sure they're a good culture fit. But if you take that approach, I think you'll see turnover go down. And, we do pour into them. I mean, for a car dealership to have a mentorship, I mean, think about it, guys. We don't have the best reputation in the world. I think there's, attorneys and ambulance chasers and divorce attorneys are down there with us. But I take great pride in being in the auto industry, and it really starts with me. I've got to set the culture, and then I've got to live. My actions have to match my words. And I'm really fortunate to have a really good team here, at CMA.
No, that's massive. And I think the mentorship is huge. And that's probably one of the first things that we talked about when you jumped into the podcast trailer, when you had your podcast, was that mentorship. And that's something that I think, we've talked about it before, the impact that it's made just on connecting you with your guys. So one of what you talked about, though, what you'll actually terminate on is typically, it sounds like core values, not doing what you say you're going to do, that type of stuff, because as long as they execute your program and they do what they say they're going to do, which is what they commit to when they get hired, because you're so clear about those expectations, they're in good shape, right? And so, Drewbie, the next one's for you, brother. When it comes to those core values, what signs do you look at for when you know, hey, somebody's kind of headed on this downhill slope, I need to correct them, or, hey, this is going to be hard to come back from? What are you typically looking for?
I'm looking for the little things. It's the, used to push in your chair, but now you don't. It's the used to be really good about following up, but then I get 2 or 3 messages from people. They're like, oh, I never heard back, right? It's the little things that start slipping that turn into the big things, because it all adds up, right? Because what happens for a sales guy especially is like they have a huge month and they make a bunch of money, and then they kind of get that like foot off the gas feeling because they're comfortable. And then they kind of forget to do a couple things. And then, that next month is a little slow. then you kind of riding them because you're like, hey man, you had a massive month, so I know you're capable, but then you just came back and were like half of your normal production. We know why this happens, right? It's a mindset thing. That's why the mentorship that Scott mentioned is so important, because you can help people understand, like, hey, just because you got a big paycheck doesn't mean that you can screw off for the next 45 or 60 days. That's what most average people do, and we're not here to be average. So I think for me, it's watching for those things so that we can kind of address them early, but then also really just, man, you can tell. Like there's a conversation shift. There's something that happens when a sales guy goes from like being honest and being integrous to just starting to say things or do things that really come back on just trying to make the money versus really living out those core values and trying to help people. It's the, hey man, I got to close these sales. I got to close these sales. And yeah, we're all in the sales game, but ultimately, no, I'm here to help people. If I show up and help enough people, then the money will be a byproduct of that. But when it's always, I got to close these sales, I got to get this money, it's a quick downward slope from there.
One of the things I love about you, Drewbie, is that's been your message from the first podcast episode that I had a guest on was Drewbie. And that's one of the first things that he talked about was, hey, I'm here to help people. And as long as I focus on that, the rest will come, you know, and it's not this woo woo thing. You know what I mean? Like you get referrals from that. You can sleep at night from that. You get peace from that. You know what I'm saying? And that permeates in your everyday life and the way that you work and the way that you operate. So I think that's massive what you're talking about there. And yeah, the little things, you know, you'll start noticing that, you know, your sales rep will come in a little later, you know what I mean? Or you'll call them at, you know, in our case, in door to door, you'll call them at 6 o'clock in the evening, which is prime time, and they won't be in the field. You know, it's these little things and they start adding up. And I would agree with Drewbie on that point too. It's like they get the big checks, and then that's when you start harping on those little things again. But if you weren't harping on them when they were closing the big deals, if you weren't harping on them when they sold, you know, 6 or 7 cars in a week, then they're going to be real surprised. Like Scott said, they're going to be real surprised when you get on their ass the next week, because they're not executing on the metrics, the action item or the actionable items that you're supposed to execute on. So I think that's one of the biggest struggles that we have as sales managers and sales leaders is, okay, when our guys are doing good, the instinct is to back off of them and to let them do their thing because they're closing deals, right? But what happens all too often is, like Drew said, they get a big check and then all of a sudden they stop doing the things that got them there. And then it's like commission breath after that, right? Wayne, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's the complacency, right? You fall into that complacent mindset, and the scary part about being in a complacent mindset is that the longer you're there, the more you're convinced that it's not anything you're doing, right? The salespeople they convince themselves that, you know, things aren't going their way, not because of their work ethic or because they're doing things differently, but because, you know, this has changed or that's changed. And in the reality, all that's really changed is their mindset. You know, I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, actually, and it was the motivation versus discipline, right? So with salespeople, especially early on, they need motivation, right? They need because motivation's a feeling, right? They need to motivate them to go out and do the work. And then over time, that motivation naturally turns into discipline. But if you don't explain to somebody that that's what naturally happens, is that you naturally develop discipline, then they constantly need that dopamine fix from motivation. They don't have the discipline built up. They're not looking for how to build discipline in their job and in their career and in their life. They're just looking for that dopamine hit of you know, they saw a motivational video by Eric Thomas and now they're all pumped up. Or, you know, it's the same with being in a gym and having music on versus having a podcast on, right? The discipline allows you to listen to a podcast or an audiobook while working out and not have to have, you know, Pantera playing in full blast to keep you motivated, right? It's the discipline piece that falls off. And I love what Scott said. I want to kind of hit on this personally for me, was the clear expectations. Like up front, this is the clear expectations that we have, and we're going to do everything and that we tell you that we're going to do. You should have expectations of us, but our expectations of you are these things, so that it's not a surprise when we sit down and say, hey, you're not, for us, is door to door, hey, you're not knocking on enough doors, or man, your knock to run ratio is way off, man. What is happening there? And are you doing the things we told you to do along this process? And then when we audit that system and that process, they're not surprised, because they knew that coming in. They knew coming into work for us that these were going to be the expectations. So anyway, that's what my thoughts are on it.
No, I appreciate it. That makes a ton of sense. And we talk about it a lot in our circles, especially within Apex, Arte and all the things that everybody's involved in, RBO, discipline versus motivation. And I guess what we don't realize until we actually start executing on the discipline, which is, there is two incredibly disciplined motherfuckers on this call right now, Scott Simons and Drewbie Wilson. I mean, y'all don't miss. Every morning I wake up, whether I wake up at 4:30 or 5:30. Now Scott's an hour ahead. So whether I wake up at 4:30 or 5:30, though, there's Scott's LFG every freaking morning, a different or a different type of post, whatever the case is, but he's always on it. And then Drewbie in his stories every morning, 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m., he's there getting his workout in. Dude's still doing what he was doing before, plus training for a marathon now. And so two really disciplined dudes. But I think what we don't realize is when we start executing on that, we get dopamine from that too. You know what I'm saying? Like when I don't go to the gym in the morning, I feel it throughout the day. When I do go to the gym and I'm done with that workout and I get to hit end on my Apple Watch, like that is a dopamine rush versus the Eric Thomas video. It was such a, go ahead.
I think you're right. Sorry to interrupt you. I think you're right. Wayne, you brought up a really good point earlier. We actually have a sheet. I know it sounds old school, but they turn in a sheet. Did you check in? Did you work the service lane? How many people did you call today? And before they leave for the day, they approach the sales desk and they say, okay, I'm checking out for the day. Here's what I did. And then the sales manager looks at it and says, okay, how many cars did you sell today? How many calls did you make today? And then we ask them before they leave, go take a quick look in the mirror and say, did I do everything I could do to be successful for me, my family, and this company today? And then that's a good chance for us to coach them. But it is spelled out what we ask them to do. Now, the good ones do above and beyond, but there's no question. The second point of what you brought up too is there's a boss and there's a leader. A boss tells you what to do. A leader shows you what to do. So I tell my team all the time, if you're going to ask them to go post on social, like I just noticed before we got on the call that one of my stores have not posted on social today. Well, really, I shouldn't have been the one reminding them. So I do a group text to the leader and his team and said, hey, I don't see your check-in. I don't see your new car post and used car post today. What's going on? Because the number 2 is in charge because the number 1's out. So I sent it to the number 2 and said, all eyes are on you. We're seeing what you could do today. How many appointments you have today? So I have to touch him and remind him, and that's coaching him to become that number 1. So he's going to get managed a little bit differently, respectfully, always respectfully. But before I can manage someone tough and get the most out of them, just like y'all know, they got to know I care. They got to know that I truly care about where they want to be. And that's why I'm pushing them. And if they know you care and they want more, then I'm going to push the shit out of them. And they're either going to respond or they're going to realize real quickly, I don't want to be a number 1. I want to go back and manage myself. I'm good. I'm good where I'm at because I don't want that type of pressure. Because pressure, that's when you find out, when your back's against the wall and you get pushed a little bit, that's when you find out what you're made out of. And the ones that step up and rise up, then they'll start doing on their own and you don't have to touch them as much. You don't have to go and remind them. But Doug, the reason why we work out so much, just like people take care of themselves, is we don't want to. I can't go in front of people that I manage and say I want to be the best version of me and be fat or out of shape or be a shitty dad or a shitty husband, and then I'm a fake. I'm a fraud. So I can't do that. So I was at 270 pounds at one point, poor health. I won't get back there. I will go play racquetball in the morning and we'll play racquetball in the evening because I can't push my team to be the best. We do a group workout every Saturday morning now, about 30 of us at 5:30 as a team building. And so we do things like that outside of work because we truly care and we're trying to push ourselves to be the best versions of us possible. But yeah, I agree. When I see other people working out, it pushes me. So I can't. Then if I don't post, Doug, they'll say, Scott, where you at? What's wrong? I'll get texts and say, hey, you didn't post. I don't schedule that. That's actually when I get up. Is the first thing I do is shut my phone down or turn it down and then go on and get my day started. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a key, man, is not letting ourselves, we can't let ourselves get comfortable. The most comfortable any of us will ever be, like my friend Glenn Lundy says, is right before death. And I don't ever want to get comfortable. So that's the reason why we push ourselves like that.
No, I love it. And you brought up a few good points. One of them being the going back to the metrics piece, but doing it on a sheet. We have this thing we call a baseball card, and it's got everything from the time you're in the field, right? And it's tracking it daily and it aggregates it weekly. So your manager can check on it daily, right? And then weekly they get turned in, and then we run the numbers up and start looking at conversion rates. And that gives us a picture company-wide of what we should be training on because of the conversion rates from knock to talking to qualified candidate to giving a full presentation to a close, right? And so those basically tells us the story through data, but it is a huge accountability piece for them just to fill that thing out on a daily basis. And even if they come into the meeting the next day and 10 minutes before pencil whip it, that means that they're trying, even though they're not doing it out in the field like they should be, and maybe they're not being completely honest, they're still saying, hey, I respect you enough to do this piece. And then you have something to work with there. You know what I mean? And I feel like our job as leaders or sales leaders is to do everything we can not to terminate people. You know what I mean? I've kept people on payroll way too long before, and it becomes a failure point in the business sometimes. Wayne and I just recently dealt with that. And so I guess I would direct this part to Wayne. Like, at what point do you feel like, hey, it's time to cut them loose and we can't do this anymore? We talked a little bit about core values earlier, but sometimes those things aren't as obvious, right? Because maybe not for Scott and Drewbie, because the positions that they have are a little higher level, but for us, it's an entry-level position. It's door to door, and we have guys they'll lie to our face sometimes about what they did that day. You know what I'm saying? So, at what point do you feel like, Wayne, hey, we got to cut them loose?
Man, it's a tough one for me. I'm always, when I was younger, I made a lot of really, really stupid things. And, a lot of people in my life gave me that second and third chance. Right. I really, having the servant's heart and wanting to help people and believe that people are just coachable, and really in my heart believing that I can coach them and help them to get past whatever they're going through. It's tough for me, right? It's what I struggle with, because there is like this fine line between who's somebody who's coachable and somebody who is just they're just holding a place. Like, they don't want to be coached. They'll nod and they'll smile and like, yeah, of course, Wayne, we'll get right on that, man. And then they just turn around and do the opposite, right? And so for me, it really is, I have to fall back on the data. I just have to. When I look at it from the personal, the little things, the gut feeling, and it just doesn't feel right. I go to the data, and the data is what tells me, hey, this person is not doing what I asked them to do. They're not doing what the expectations are. And no matter what I say or how I say it, it's not going to change. It's time for us just to part ways. So that's what it has to be for me. It's the only thing I can fall back on, man, because my bleeding heart gut is it steers me wrong sometimes. So
and some of the reason that is because the connection we have with the guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know who they are, and it's the hardest thing. It took us a long time. Some of the cuts that we made were people that have been with us 5 years and their core values aligned perfectly, but our business couldn't afford it anymore. Couldn't afford to carry someone that had the right core values but wasn't producing. And that's difficult. You don't hear that much from the stage anymore, but it's true. Sometimes people can be the right people but be in the wrong position, but there is no position to move them into. You know what I mean? So you got to let them go. So on that, on that connection piece, that gets us in trouble sometimes. Most of the time, it's completely necessary that you're connected with your people. And it's one of the things that I really struggled with back in 14 and 15 when I had 100, Wayne and I had 110 sales reps. It's like, how do you stay connected with 100 plus people? That's when your levels of management become incredibly important. You need to make sure, we had assistant manager, regional, vice president, and then myself, right? So you need to make sure that everybody's responsible for their piece, right? So an assistant manager is connecting with their team, but the market manager is as well. The regional is as well. And so we would schedule monthly phone calls with different levels of management and the entry level reps. We always wanted the entry level reps to be heard, but we would schedule it out to where, okay, 2 days in, they get a call from me. And then 4 days in, they get a call from the regional. And then they have a one-on-one with their local market manager and their assistant manager they see every day and they train with every day. And so we would set it up like that. But I want to hear from you guys how y'all keep that connection with your team, whether you have a small team or a large team like Scott with 60 plus people. How do you keep that connection with your team? I'll kick it off with Drewbie.
Hey, Doug, before we get into that, we did have a comment from Stu Segura.
Okay.
It's on the screen, and it's kind of going back to the firing and hiring. He was talking about anytime he ever had to fire, it should have been done weeks, months prior, and he wasn't going with his gut. So how, and I'm kind of wording it in the question that I have, how would you balance going with your gut versus like that first, like initial thing? Like, is that, I guess it kind of leads into getting to know your team. But just kind of, I want to hear how you guys would break that down.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So, I have that tingling feeling that I need to cut someone loose. And so this is where, having someone like Wayne in place is huge. I'll have that tingling feeling and I'll hit Wayne up and I'll ask him, hey, am I crazy here? Should we cut this person loose? And he's typically the one to bring me back to center. You know what I'm saying? And that's typically our process for that. Obviously, there's a lot of variables involved with metrics and everything. But at that point, we're putting them on some type of probationary period. And yeah, Stu's 100% right. 90% of the time that we do end up having to cut them loose because they're not willing to do the work, right? But putting that couple of weeks is what helps you sleep at night, and you made the right choice after that couple of weeks versus going with your gut initially, cutting them loose, and maybe you help the business out a little bit, maybe your profit margin got a little better, but I just always want to be sure that I do my due diligence and make sure that they've been given every opportunity to turn that performance around. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think for me, man, like part of this is what we were just talking about, maintaining that connection, right? So one of my mentors and I were just talking about this. How do I describe it? We call them walkabouts. So like typically Mondays we do our team meetings, right? But like after the meeting, everybody's kind of said their piece and you would think normally, okay, cool, we did a meeting, we're good. But even after that, I still kind of walk around a little bit to each individual and I kind of get like hey, you good? Like, is everything cool? Is there anything you need? Like just triple checking, because not everybody's willing to be public about their problems or their situations. A lot of people don't want to be vulnerable. And so they'll just tell you, yeah, I'm good. But like you typically will know, and Scott, like I've heard some amazing, very powerful stories on his end from this very type of situation. But like just that check-in of once a week, kind of seeing how's your people going, even if it's just the once. And then, like you said, sometimes you just go and scroll their social media, right? Because people will tell you a lot without telling you a lot, just based on the things that they're doing in passing or like passively. So that's one of the things that I try to do to maintain that connection, because I think it's like any relationship, right? When that connection or that communication breakdown starts, if it continues, that's why things get as bad as they do, because it just, nobody knows. And then we're both kind of avoiding the situation, and then it just snowballs and it gets too far. So if you can just stay on contact and just stay on top of these things, it's a lot easier to put the fire out when it's small versus when it's taking over the whole dumpster.
Nah, I think that's huge, man. That person or in-person conversation is massive, because then you get body language. It's not just a phone call. Even over Zoom, it's not the same. So anytime I visit Corpus Christi right now is where most of our business is done. I try to have a one-on-one conversation with everybody there, just so I can get that energy feeling from them and know that, hey, we're good. They have everything that they need, whatever the case may be. But they got a positive energy, a good energy in general. And if they don't, then I'll kind of dig into that, and that's resulted in tears and all kinds of stuff sometimes. As we get older, we get better at reading people in general, whether or not their energy's off. And if there's energy is off, then give them an opportunity to kind of vent, even if it's just venting, right? Scott, I know you're going to jump in there.
Yeah, no, it's so true. We have had a couple situations where the people were good people. Like I literally, a person in my mentorship, I found out that at 18, he and a 15-year-old had a baby, and he had to give up that child, and it's bothering him, and he's struggling a little bit. And if I didn't know that story behind him and what his why is to go back and have a place in that child's heart, that child's life, which now he's 25, then I probably wouldn't give him a second chance because he's been struggling. So I have a used car assistant position that he can go and help take pictures and kind of reset. Now I told him, I said, it's going to be up to you. When you have 180 employees, all these different departments, you can put them in a different position. I said, now it's going to be up to you. But when I went and talked to his leader, I said, does he have a positive attitude? Does he show up on time? Does he work hard? Is he good culture fit? Yes. If they would have said no to any of those, I'd have probably sat down and said, look, obviously you're struggling. What can I do? What can we do to help you? What can we do? And then what are you going to do to help you? And then let's agree to this level of performance you can get to. We're going to start here. You're not going to go from here to here. We're going to go to here, and then we'll go to here, then we'll go to here. Are you up to it? It's going to take you maybe working more, making more phone calls, getting out of your comfort zone, showing up at 7:15 and working the service lane. Are you willing to do that? But I do have a couple of really good success stories where we had people that were good culture fit. They were struggling, and we had that talk with them, and they were like, uh-oh. Like they've never really been called out before. They've kind of been coddled. They kind of not really been called out, or someone that cares about them and says, look, I really don't want to have to let you go. I don't want to. So what are we going to do about this? And then I tell you, one of them is one of my top salespeople, and another one is a manager that's going back through my mentorship. So those conversations can turn around. And also sometimes you find that they're in the wrong position. But body language, man, when you walk by and you see, if you see performance is down, just have a conversation with them. Typically, something's going on outside of work, family, money, daughters, sons. It's not anything to do with work. They're bringing what's going on outside of work into work. Same thing with pissed off customers. When I find out that customers are pissed off, it's typically not pissed off about the situation. They're pissed off because we didn't communicate about it, and they're pissed off. There's something else going on in their life that they're taking it out on us. So that's just some feedback. But reading people, when you pass them and you feel that vibe, or you take a look at them and something's not right, do have that conversation.
100%. Ryan, you got something for us?
It was Stu's follow-up. I wanted to share that. So yeah, he was listening, and then that one thing is that what Drewbie was saying about if their response is just good, setting back and getting that one-on-one, that heart-to-heart is kind of the way that you're going to go about it. And I agree. I agree 100% on that, because I don't run a business. I don't have anybody under me, but from the times that I've had something on my mind, being able to just sit down and talk to Doug about it has really helped in various areas. So I thank you guys for your time on that question, and I'll let you guys get back to what y'all were talking about.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more on that, Scott. And I guess a more specific way, or to kind of get you to expand on this, because I think it's important to understand that we're not always going to be able to pass them in the hall, right? We're not always going to be able to have that one-on-one conversation with them. And so do you guys, because y'all have so many people, do y'all have systems in place to stay connected? You talked about the AM workouts once a week, I think before we went live. So that's huge. What other things do y'all have going on that it kind of creates that conversation, or it creates an environment where everybody's sharing?
So I mentor their leaders. Their mentors lead them. They lead them. They still keep me in the loop. And if it's something bad, they let me know. Hey, boss, Drewbie's going through something at home. if you pass him, so say, hey, Drewbie, man, hey, bro, good. I understand you're going through a little bit. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. We're here for you, bro. You need a little time off. Do you need a draw? Do you need money? Like, what can we do to help you? And they keep me if I need to know. Now they don't tell me everything, but if a situation where they need me just to go touch that situation, or I got a real pissed off customer, like the heat seekers come to me and my assistant, we deal with those, and we deal with a lot of things that take a lot of the BS off of the leaders. But they can't report to me. They have to report to their leader, because there's also a hierarchy of command, right? Just like in the military. If they have an issue, the first thing I'm going to say is, did you go to your leader? Because if you come to me and I go to them, it's going to create a problem. Go address it with them first. Let them handle it first. Now, if it's something to do with HR or something bad, then yeah, come to me. Or we have a 1-800 number any associate could call, because our company has 1,200 associates total. We just have the 180 here. So,
Right.
so they have to go to their leader first. If not, it undermines their leader. So they have to follow that chain of command, because nothing ever goes well about going above the person ahead of you.
Yeah.
Never works out.
I couldn't agree more. And where it happens too often is when they're in basically that what's going on conversation. Why have your numbers dropped? Why has your performance dropped? And all of a sudden you hear about all these issues. That it's never failed. That's how it's worked out. But it wasn't a big enough issue until you were being held accountable, So you have to kind of be able to hear that. And then it's like, okay, well, did you take it to your leader? Just like Scott said. And then 9 times out of 10, they hadn't yet, because it wasn't big enough. They're just using that as an excuse to why they're not performing now. So having the ear for that, kind of the bullshit to sales ratio a little bit there is important. We want to be positive all the time, but sometimes holding people are held accountable in different ways, right? And sometimes it's negative and sometimes it's positive, right? So, Wayne, I want you to jump in here, brother. You're to me, better than anybody I've ever seen at, grabbing someone one-on-one, sitting them in your office and having that tough conversation with them to find out, okay, what's really going on here? How do you structure that conversation? And what is your goal at the end of that conversation?
Man, this conversation typically is I go through my experience, like what I've been through, what I've done, and I lead that conversation off with, kind of what's going on, get kind of the basic level of what the problem is, and then my experience with it, and then that typically gets folks to kind of open up, right? And let me know what's really going on, and get to the grassroots. I've had mentors in my life they're really, really good at doing that. They were really good at, telling me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. The saying that the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off, is super true, So, sitting down with them and just listening, genuinely listening to be of service is I think what's been the key to my success. And I don't give people advice. That's the other thing too, is I don't give anybody advice. I mean, I'll tell you what I did and what's worked for me. And if you want to take that and go with it, cool. But I don't speak on what I don't know as well. I mean, if it's somebody's going through something that I have zero experience on, man, I'm going to tell you, man, I don't know anything about that. Yeah, maybe I know somebody who does, or I can put you in the right direction. Or if you just want an ear to listen, I'm here for you. Being married for, gosh, this is our 18th anniversary coming up, 19th anniversary coming up.
Congrats, brother. That's nice.
And man, next month, man, it's wild. But when we got married, we had a counselor, and he said the key to a happy marriage is to stop trying to solve my wife's problems and just listen, right? And that's tough, right? So instead of, hey, here's the solution to your problem, it's, hey, I'm going to listen to what's going on and see if you want a solution. But most of the time, people just want to be heard. They want to get the stuff out of between their ears, and somebody to listen to them genuinely, and not figure out a way to turn it towards business or anything else. Just listen to them from a human level, and then let them know too that they're human and it's okay, man. Humility is the act of being human, right? So it's okay. I mean, you're no better or worse than who you truly are, and it'll be all right. So that's what works for me, man. That's what always worked for me.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for sharing that with us. And, I think a big point of what Wayne just said is the vulnerability piece. Once you're willing to, and there's levels to it, right? You start out being vulnerable with your people, let them know, hey, I made this mistake too in the past, or I had the same issue you're having, and this is how I dealt with it, or this is how I failed at it, and I don't want you to fail at it, so don't do what I did, right? I think that Wayne's 100% right. It completely opens them up, and you get more out of them than you ever hoped for, and so that's got to be a big piece of it. And then as you go up in levels, being vulnerable with your company as a whole, and then just being vulnerable with people that you run into, and then you become this authentic, integrity driven person no matter who you're around. And that to me is like, there's faith, family, fitness, finances, all that stuff that we want to be great at. I mean, and then there's values too that we strive to be great at. So we've covered a lot, and we're definitely over on time. So everybody's getting bonus time, and I respect you guys' time. So I want to wrap this up. So typically at the end of my episodes, I'll ask my guest, what does legacy mean to you, and what legacy you're going to leave behind? But all these guys have been guests before, so I kind of wanted to let them toot their own horns a little bit, as well as, let's talk a little. I guess it's a little more of a selfish question, right? But I want to know, I want to know what's important to these guys. I want to know what's important to the listeners too, as well, in terms of y'all's goals, right? And feel free to post that in the comments as well. But my question is, if you had a baseball card at the end of your life and you turned over that baseball card, what stats would be on the back? And, I know we all want to have impact. I know we all want to help others, but be selfish with this answer, guys. All right. So you have metrics in your businesses, you have metrics in your financials, or in, your materials, whatever the case is. You've got these things that are important to you, not that they make you. Right? We know what makes you. Most of the guys on this call, I know exactly what your core values are and what you're about, because y'all have impacted me greatly in those things. So what I really want to know is the numbers piece. And so I'll kick it off. I definitely want a number 1 rated podcast. I don't care what it's number 1 in. You know what I mean? I definitely want 100 6-figure earners. To have created 100 6-figure earners, and at one time, not necessarily in a lifetime, because I feel like that's pretty achievable, but at one given time, 100 6-figure earners. And that's a big one for me. And then 100 acres of land. That's part of the legacy piece that I typically talk about. So those are my 3 that are kind of top of mind right now. What about for you guys? I'll kick it off with Drewbie.
So we're talking like, if we're dead, what's on the baseball card? Like, what's on my last card?
Mm-hmm.
Then, man, honestly, I'm just trying to leave an impact with every single person I talk to or come across. Because, like, the stats really don't matter, bro. Like, they're numbers. They're all made up, and someone's going to beat them at some point anyway. So, like, to me, all I need my baseball card to say is that I called the damn leads, that I crushed the damn day, and that I left an impact on every single person I met.
You took the high road, you jerk. No, I get it, man. I do. I completely understand that. But I know there's some dollar amounts that you want to hit in there too. So,
hey, all man, right, brother. I barely graduated high school, and they told me I was going to be in prison when I was 16 and showed up at school with tattoos on my hands. I now have tattooed meme lord across my knuckles. I make money every single day by making memes and trolling the internet. The stats don't fucking matter, and what they tell you doesn't matter. It's what you want out of life that's going to make the difference, man.
Amen, brother. Amen. What's your feedback on that, Scott?
Well, I'm going to give a politically correct answer. You know that just based. I stayed out of the taco burrito debate, hot debate that was going on earlier. You know, I want you. I know you want us to focus on numbers, but this is what I'll focus on. At the end, when they flip it over, I'm not really worried about the numbers. I'm really not. I'm worried. I would hope. I'm not. I don't really worry. I would hope somebody would say, or back there would say, he was a good husband. He was a good dad. He was a good friend. He was a good leader. And how I want to be remembered as, or what I want to be remembered by, I had one phone call to make and I need help. And I called Scott and he answered. I may not be able to help. I may not be able to go but all my team knows that if you call me or if you text me, I'm going to answer. And they know that about me. And I always want to be remembered as the person that I, no matter what, can always count on me, because there was times in my life that I didn't have that person to call. And I said, if I can get out of this mess that I got myself in, or if I could change my life and turn it around and, and start caring more about others than I did about myself, trying to achieve a goal, then that's what my mantra, that's what I promised I would do. And I'm not perfect, but I try to live by that. I have had salespeople call me at 3 a.m. I've went to court and represented people that I care about. I've called and tried to help people. I've lent thousands of dollars that I'll never get back. I've given people the shirt off my back as they put a knife in mine later. And that's okay, but I just want to be remembered as, if you got one phone call, that I would answer. If you're in my network and a friend of mine.
I love it. Scott, one phone call, Simons. I'm coining it. It's decided.
I love it.
That's Scott's middle name now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That is a cool number though. That one, that one phone call, that one guy you can depend on, the one that's going to answer. And dude, I felt it when you said, take the shirt off my back and then them just stab a knife in it. Oh, I felt that. I think we've all felt that before on this call. Wayne, what do you got on this?
Man, I want to help as many people as possible. It's not really a number for me either. I mean, I had this goal when I turned 40 that I wanted to make $1 million before I turned 50. And now I don't really have that number. I mean, it really is about helping people, man. I genuinely want to help people become millionaires. I want people working for me that I've helped to become a millionaire. But more than anything, I want to be, like Scott said, I want to be known as a good husband, a good father, a good man of Christ, and lead people to God. And that's really what is important. I mean, the numbers, the money, everything comes from just being a good person. Anyway, that's a tough one, man, because I mean, I could sit down and look at the numbers and, come up with goals, but really at the end of the day, if I can look people in the eye and have them look me in the eye and know that I'm going to be there for them, and that I'm there for my family and my kids and my wife. And that's what's most important to me. That's the stat on the back that matters, that I showed up.
100%. I had somebody asked a question, I think in Sales Talks with Sales Pros the other day, and they asked, they were in a funk, couldn't get out of their own head, and they just, you could tell by the text that they wrote on there that they were in a bad spot. And what Wayne just said is what I told them, just show up. I think we got a call this afternoon. But I did. I commented on there, hey, just show up for your family, show up for your business, show up for your commitments. I've had several mornings, especially it's weird. The worst things always happen right before a podcast airing. I don't know what that is, or you know what I mean? It's like FOA just goes hard right before you go live with someone, and you have to be positive. You know what I mean? And I always remind myself, hey, just show up and something magical is going to happen. And something magical has happened today. This is probably going to be one of our most listened to episodes. I've really enjoyed it, guys. And I appreciate y'all taking the time. All y'all took over an hour and a half to be on this show and just delivered an insane amount of value. couldn't thank you more. Just want to remind everybody watching and listening. I don't ask for anything on the show. We don't run ads. We do ask you to share it and review it if you get a chance. But more importantly, the major ask that I have right now is a donation towards the Movember campaign. It doesn't even have to be my campaign. Mental health is a real issue in men's lives. I think it's 2 men take their lives compared to every 1 woman, or no, it may be 4 to 1. It's way up there. 75% of suicides are men, I believe. And so it's an issue that's faced our country for a little too long. And if we can just one person, we can all affect just one person, whether that's giving $20, growing a mustache, reaching out to your buddy, or just saying, hey, you want to jump on a call, 100% do that. And that goes into what all these guys are saying right now, in that they're that one call person that Scott was talking about. So I appreciate you guys. Any closing thoughts from anybody?
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you for having me on. It's been an honor to run with y'all brothers. And if you ever need anything, give me a call.
One call,
Appreciate
Scott.
you too, Scott. One call, Scott.
Yeah, one call, Scott. That's it.
That's
the
it,
man
man.
right there, baby. No, I appreciate you,
Happy,
man. I love all you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you guys.
I
That's it.
appreciate
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving,
Ryan, you want
guys,
to give us
and
the final
thanks for
taco
the,
count?
You can just stay muted because the answer is burritos.
You're muted, brother.
That's because he already gave me the answer. It's burritos. That you don't need any technical help there, bro. The answer is burritos. Mute, unmute, don't
Still
matter.
muted. Still muted.
Come on over here.
He's got to jump in.
Oh, for whatever reason, it's like not letting me unmute. But the final taco was tacos. It was tacos.
Be gone. Be gone with this nonsense. That's why
That's all right.
you
We
had to
still
walk
got-
across the room to give me that
I feel like
answer.
that was like the presidential election. It was rigged. It's got to be rigged.
Once again, Scott, I
Dang.
appreciate you.
That's
That's why I
right.
called you,
Not-
brother, because
he's
you already
down
got
the
my
middle.
back.
That was not a down the middle observation.
Later, yeah.
No, I appreciate you guys. I know y'all got more work to get to. Thank you for coming on. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for everybody for listening and tuning in on a live episode and commenting.